good news is this. So let's say, just like I said, if, with positive intent, if the strategy you created, like my strategy for getting help, if that strategy you've created is not working for you, then the good news is you created it so you can create something different. If you become a victim and you're like, I don't know why this is happening, it's not me, it's them, it's not me, then you have absolutely no power at all over anything. The second you become a victim and the second you blame someone else, do you agree with me on this? The second you blame another person, you lose all your power, because if they're in control of you and your life and your situation, or if they're in control of anything, then there's nothing you can do and you feel stuck. That's how people get stuck. There's somebody else who has power over them. It could be in a relationship, it could be at work, anywhere. So once you actually look at your life and look at your relationship, or look at your wherever you are in relationship, and say, okay, this is the way it is right now. Somehow I've set it up this way. And I want to look at myself, find out what strategies that I'm using right now that are not working for me at all, or my relationship. And I want to create new strategies that work. And that's where it's all about looking at yourself. Again, you have to start with you. You have to start with you. And that's why, I tell couples all the time, I'm like, I want to see you individually too. Because each individual has issues. And in order to cause transformation. Now, how do you work on yourself and grow? A million different ways. Seminars, and what? How do you work on yourself?
I read a lot. I come to seminars.
Yeah.
I talk to other people. Sometimes I'll talk to my spouse. Usually that's the last resort.
Yeah, so grow. Okay, so if you created it, you can change it. Now, relationships are emotional, right? They're not logical. You don't meet someone and go, okay, let's see here. They've got brown eyes. I really wanted my child to have blue eyes, but maybe. I mean, it's like you fall in love and you're like, ah! And then you're like, oh my God, I didn't want to love him or her, or how did this happen? Where did it? This is horrible. It just happens, right? And then all of a sudden you're married and you're like, whoa, or you're in a relationship and you got to make it work. So relationship is very emotional. So what you have to do is you have to master your emotions, and I call it emotional fitness. And this is very, very important. What makes people crazy with their emotions, it's interesting. It's something called the crazy eight. And I know you've experienced this before. So crazy eight is where you go from one emotional state, like one extreme emotional state, to the other. And it happens to all of us. So, have any of you ever, like when I was going through my divorce, there was a period of time where I would go through sad, mad, sad, mad, sad. Have you ever gotten in a fight and you're like sad, mad, sad, like you're just going from one to the other and it just keeps going and you're like, oh God, this is horrible, and they're like, that, you go there. You go sad, in two different places. So the other thing that you can do is a crazy eight is also present when your partner has a behavior that they do that provokes a response in you. And then that provokes a reaction, and then this just keeps repeating itself. Behavior, response, reaction. And it's almost like a little pattern, like, do you ever feel like you're on autopilot with let me see how to say this. Do you ever feel like in your relationships that they say one thing and you say another, and you don't even think about it, or you react in one way and you're like, it just happens. That's the crazy eight. It's like somebody has a behavior immediately. So years ago, actually not that long ago, but Matt would smoke. If he had a cigarette, I went crazy. I was upset, not crazy, but I was mad. Like that's my form of being crazy is like, getting real mad. So, but it was instant, like instant. I would be walking around the house, and all of a sudden, I'd look over and I'd see, just see it in his hand, And I would get like built up emotion. Like I'd have tears in my eyes. I'm like, I hate this. I'm done. This is crazy. Oh my gosh, this is awful. You know, and then it just happened like that. So that behavior triggered a reaction. And then guess what would happen with him? He got mad. You're trying to control me. Stop controlling me. I want to be me. I want to do what I want, right? And then it went back, and the same thing happened. Response, again, from me, I'm not trying to control you. I just want to be with a man who's healthy and doesn't smoke. And then, right? Or whatever. You know, and that's a simple way of saying it, but this happens in relationships. We live in patterns in relationships, and it goes round and round and round. But we don't necessarily see it. It's not brought to our attention because we still think it's that. And I have to say that I found out time after time after time that many, many, many times it's you. Okay? You know, I probably have 100,000 women never speak to me again or hate me after I say this, but I had responsibility in my husband's infidelity. I didn't know that in the beginning, during the divorce. I was like, it's his fault, he did it. But I had some responsibility there, and I had to look at what it was. Who was I being in the relationship that caused him to act the way that he did? And I was being very controlling, like very controlling in the relationship. And I'm not condoning the behavior or saying it was right at all, but what I am saying is that there's always a place to look at us. He had the choice to do it or not, and he made the choice to do it. But I also had some responsibility there. And guess what that did for me? Knowing that helped me to learn something about myself that does not work in relationships. So when I got into my next relationship, I started doing it again and found out that if I kept doing it, I would ruin this one too. You see? So whenever you learn, and wait a minute, we're going to go back and look at past relationships as well for you who, if you're not in a relationship now. But anytime there's an issue present. I mean, I was with someone who beat me up when I was 20. What's my responsibility in that? I chose him and I stayed with him. I hung in there, I stayed with him. There's responsibility. We always have some kind of responsibility. When you take a little bit of responsibility, it gives you power because then you can change something. If you don't take responsibility, you can't change anything because somebody else has control over you. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, what we're going to, it's funny, understanding. A lot of people are like, I understand, I get it, I got it. Understanding is really meaningless. I mean, there's psychotic people who understand their behaviors, right? There's mentally ill people that are in the hospital right now who completely understand. They're like, I know. I mean, I've had mentally ill people come see me, and they know their behavior. I know I do this and I do this and I do this, but that does nothing unless you take action. I'm not speaking of mentally ill people now, but I mean, understanding is meaningless without action. You have got to take action. Absolutely take action.